Welcome to NARAL's The Morning After. Each Thursday, our podcast brings you the latest on reproductive health care, progressive politics, and the fight to keep abortion safe and legal. NARAL's The Morning After is a production of NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Pro-Choice OH. Enjoy the show.
I'm Elaina.
I'm Kellie.
I'm Gabe. Welcome, Kellie of the North.
Howdy. Winter is coming.
Yes. I was thinking that we've got two Kellys now, and so I feel that you need some Game of Thrones Kellie of the North.
I'm the OG.
I don't actually watch the show, so I can't make more of a reference than that, but
Kellie of the North, it works.
okay. And welcome back, Elaina. What I thought we'd discuss today, since I've got both of you in the office, is this new partnership between NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio and Ohio ORCRC, which is the Ohio Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice.
The only group with a longer name than ours.
Right.
Yes, a mouthful.
Ohio ORCRC.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that's brand new. And Kellie, it was your idea. So why don't you explain it?
Well, so we've worked with the Ohio RCRC for years and years. The relationship goes back longer than my 15-year tenure. But this is a new, closer relationship, a new phase in the relationship, because now we have an official partnership where Elaina Ramsey is working with us as the executive director of the Ohio Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, and she's housed in the NARAL office. So although she's running the RCRC in Ohio, she's also part of the NARAL team, which I think really is going to allow for a lot more collaboration and specifically work on combating abortion stigma. And, you know, to the extent that we can provide administrative support to the RCRC, it's a way for us to ensure that those faith voices that support women are heard. And we actually found Elaina while we were looking to fill another position in our organization. And Elena's resume came across my desk, and I was like, oh my God, this woman's so amazing. I have to figure out how to work with her. And, you know, at the same time, you know, the RCRC was going through some leadership transition. And so I reached out to them and I was like, hey, what do you think about us working more closely together? And we talked to their board and our board, and everybody said yes. And then I called Elaina and I was like, so how'd you like to jump off a cliff? And she was like, okay. And so here we are.
Parachute.
Yes, with a parachute. And so here we are. It's really exciting.
It is. Oh my goodness. I'm 2 months in, and it's just meant a world to me to have this partnership. You know, to move back home and be doing work that I absolutely love. You know, love engaging faith communities and fusing, you know, like moral and political and spiritual power to that. And to be able to work with NARAL to make that happen. I mean, I just think it's absolutely divine.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think it was an accident that we found each other and that the timing was right. I don't believe in coincidence.
So, you know, RCRC has been operating in Ohio since I started with Planned Parenthood back in 2008. They were moving pretty strong then. And it seemed that most times that we came to the State House to offer testimony, back in the day, it was Barb Avery, and then Kathy Levy, and then Laura Young. Each of those directors always seemed to, you know, bring that religious presence to specifically the testimony presented to committee members. Is RCRC part of a larger movement, or are you just hanging out there by yourself?
Oh no, we are part of the national RCRC, so we have a strong legacy of interfaith engagement on reproductive health choice, rights, and justice issues. We actually are rooted in the clergy consultation service on abortion tradition, which is, you know, all these faith leaders, mostly the Protestant Jewish traditions, who came together before Roe and, you know, risked their professional and personal lives to make sure that women had access to care, and took great risk to do that. And so the RCRC follows in that legacy. And it's, really great that we're a part of this larger network, and to then broaden that, to the secular movements, because we need each other. And so I think that's what's so powerful about this partnership that we're doing with NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio. So I'm grateful to not be alone in this work, because, we're very much in a rebuilding phase here in Ohio. There's lots of good work that needs to happen, and so much to build from. And, of course, the advocacy, the State House, but there's so much, public education and spiritual counseling that also goes into the work of the Ohio RCRC.
Well, I think, one of the legacies of the RCRC has been to tell women, whether abortion was legal or not, that, you are still supported by the faith community, and that you are important, that you are cared about, and that you deserve quality health care, regardless of the political circumstances. And I think, that goes back over 45 years, 50 years. And NARAL was the same. We were started as the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws. So we both have organizations that have roots that go back 50 years. And I think that's important to the abortion stigma. But I think one of the reasons why the RCRC, even though it's been around so long, is so important is that the faith community has not been as heard on the pro-choice side as they have on the anti-choice side. We have an office in the preterm abortion clinic, and we're very close with a lot of the abortion providers and work a lot with women who have had abortions. And, the thing that always breaks my heart is that stigma. So many people write in journals, I know that this is the right decision for myself and my family, but, I'm worried that I'm going to hell. I'm worried about this or that. Even people who did not grow up in the church, they still have that tape in their head. And, all of the restrictions, all of the bad things that happen around abortion, whether it's the protesters or the bans on certain kind of procedures, it's all rooted in that stigma. And so much of that stigma is rooted in, I think, a pretty perverted and, inauthentic faith voice. And so I think that's what's so exciting to me about the RCRC is that as their voices are lifted up and heard, women who have had abortion care, and let's face it, it's 1 in 3 women, right? Will have an abortion at some point in their life, that they'll know that, they're not jeopardizing their soul, their eternal life, or whatever those other concerns are, that they'll know that they're loved regardless.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, women are of sacred worth, and that's the message that we're trying to reclaim,
Right.
Knowing that, so many of the anti-choice extremists who, really peddle a toxic form of religion has said otherwise, and have made, women feel judged and condemned for these decisions that are very personal, private, and take great care and thought. I've never met a woman who, just flippantly decided to make this choice, and to then honor, just women's agency to be able to do that, walk with them and journey with them without judgment is, I think, a very holy thing to be doing. And I hate that my faith, the Christian faith, is being represented by an anti-choice message that
I do too.
Yeah,
I do too.
Not representative.
I've always been told you can't be a Christian and be pro-choice. And I'm like, really? Or you can't be a feminist and be pro-choice. And, the fact of the matter is, for me, the reason I am all those things is because of my faith. I come out of the Christian tradition, and, the story, so many of the stories in the Bible just point to the fact that, women have worth, that, if you believe in Jesus, that Jesus was a feminist. I mean, I could go on and on about that, a whole podcast just on that. But one that I think about almost every day when I go to our office, we have an office in the north at preterm, and we go past those protesters with their signs, with all of the things that they say, this kind of, hateful religious perspective, and yelling at me, yelling at the people who work there, yelling at the patients. And I always think of the story from John chapter 8 about the woman who was accused of adultery. And, the town basically starts to gather and pick up stones, and they're going to stone her to death. And, of course, many people who even aren't, someone who went to church a lot, they know that what Jesus said, hey, who here has not sinned? You pick up the first stone. What the Bible doesn't say is where Jesus stood in that situation. But all my life, ever since I was a little girl, 6 years old, when I got my first Bible, I always pictured him standing between the crowd and the woman. And, and that always invokes the clinic escorts to me, that they stand between that crowd that's going to condemn these people without knowing them, without being, above judgment themselves. And, I think that is such a faithful witness for those who, do that because of their faith. One of our board members is a retired clergy member, and he's a clergy counselor. And I know that's very much, where he's coming from in that we're supposed to stand up for each other. And, when Jesus asked, whoever doesn't have any sin, you pick up the first stone. Nobody picked up a stone. Because, of course we're all just, trying to do our best in this life. And I think there was an acknowledgement of that. So I don't know. I think about that story over and over again. And I think to myself, why don't they see themselves in this story? Why do they not understand that they're the crowd with the stones? Why don't they see that? It always surprises me.
Yeah, because I think we might be reading different Bibles or sacred texts. I mean, all of those stories, in Scripture are, rooted in compassion and care, but it's so much been distorted, and it's, again, just does not represent who I am and whose I am. And as as a person of faith, I think it's incumbent upon me to declare a different message, and that that we're all loved. The patients, the providers, and even the protesters.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
But, when Jesus told us to love God and to love our neighbor, Jesus didn't say the neighbors you like. He just said your neighbor, period.
Right.
That means all of them.
Yeah. And that's where the moral power of just truth telling and prophetic witness, comes in, that we have to stand up for one another, even in the face of evil. And sometimes that happens from other people of faith.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So one of the spots where I hear the questions back is in committee, and it always seemed that there would be questions from the members of the legislature to our witnesses, and to the antis. Frequently in the first few years of when I did this, we'd see a lot of the presence of the Catholic Conference of Catholic Bishops. They would have somebody coming to testify, and then we would normally have a rabbi or a reverend or both. And when they heard the explanation, when the committee members heard the explanation of why these bills stood against this religious freedom, the committee members, it's like they had a sudden onset of migraine. It was like, why?
Yes.
And then we saw sort of the same reaction as RCRC in the past has held clinic blessings outside of preterm. And I can't remember if they did one in Columbus, but preterm was the one that got like the biggest headlines.
They did. And I was there that day. And, when you were, it was surreal to be there and then read the reactions later. Because when you were there, it was so uplifting and loving and powerful and healing. And, there were people of all different faith traditions and no faith tradition at all, who all came together, in this, kind of spiritual endeavor to say, that, you are blessed, you are loved, and you're doing, good work. And then you read about it later, and, it's, all this fire and brimstone, and, they're going to hell, and this is the devil's work. And, yada, yada, yada. And, I know the RCRC got a lot of hate mail from that. And I wasn't surprised, because honestly, the thing that upsets the anti-choice side the most is when you reclaim your faith within this, because somehow they think they own this issue. Because of their faith perspective, they own God. I mean, you see that even beyond abortion and politics in general. Conservatives, they say things like, they're for gun rights, and I'm like, I don't know, Jesus and gun rights. I don't see it. I don't see like an action, but okay. So, it was just so wonderful that day at the clinic, such an affirmation of everyone who worked there. And I think it was healing, because so much of what people who are at these clinics experience from the face of religion is ugliness and hate. And to have, all of these clergy members show up with their stoles and their robes and, and all the regalia and, sing and put their arms around people. I think that was a first for a lot of people. And, just as a person of faith, completely separate of my life at NARAL, I think one of the things that's always, if you can separate those things, I don't know. One of the things I've always thought is, do you have any idea how many people you're driving away from, your church, your synagogue, whatever, with this? People don't want to be a part of this. They know that it's hypocritical. They know it's not authentic. And I think that's why they get so angry when they see, people of faith taking, kind of reclaiming that and saying, no, we have a moral argument here as well that's rooted in our faith. And honestly, there's nothing that evokes hate from the anti-choice community more than that I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's, I'm not surprised to hear that. I mean, it was certainly before my time, but that model of a clinic blessing, now our RCRC has taken that nationally, realizing that, it's one of the most powerful things to do is to witness and put your faith out there, that it needs to be out in the public square, like, where is your faith if it is not, speaking to the needs of today? And so to be able to do that in a space that is often so controversial, I think is holy ground, and to be able to reclaim that, again, if you're not doing something wrong and getting, a lot of pushback, then obviously,
you're probably not doing enough. The motto at my congregation is first grace, then faith, then works. Works, people. Means get out there and do something. Whatever that is that you're called to do. It doesn't mean, oh, well, I'm just going to be cozy here in my little safe life and not, reach out and, and fight for, what other people need, whatever that is that you're called to do. For us, it's, reproductive rights, health, and justice. For other people, it's hunger. For other people, it's peace. It's gun violence. It's all sorts of things. But anyone who's called to do this work, that is rooted in peace and rooted in justice and rooted in love for your neighbor, I think that should be honored.
We got about 10 minutes left. How do we move forward?
Well, super glad that Elaina's here because I think that's an important part of that. And I'll let her speak to some of the work that the RCRC might be exploring. But I also want to kind of lift up that, one of the things that the RCRC has done is really, helped on an individual level, counsel people who are considering abortion care or have had abortions, with that stigma that's come from, that toxic religious perspective. I think that's so important. If you're going to be an advocate for an issue and you have any internalized stigma, that's really step one. That's step one to really grounding yourself in that issue and being able to go out and advocate on behalf of others. And I think that's something that the RCRC is just uniquely able to do and does so well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so much of what we do is that heart and mind work. It's changing and transforming, your inner core values. And that is something, much more beyond what we can do politically. And so that's where, RCRC steps in and tries to provide, that educational witness, spiritual development that says that there's a different way of looking at, our religious texts and traditions, one that is not so narrow and exclusive and reactionary, but is filled with healing and hope, and honors people's, whole lives. That there's not many spaces or places or in society where it can touch, the deepest parts of our lives. And so religion needs to be a force for moral good. And so that's what, we really try to, promote this very holistic look at our reproductive lives, because it touches every part of, who we are as beings.
Well, and as you said the phrase "our whole lives," of course, it immediately made me think about the comprehensive sex ed curriculum that was developed by the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Church, which is called Our Whole Lives, or OWL for short. Hey, OWL people, if you're out there. And it's a sex ed curriculum, from K through adulthood about decision making and values, and it's very sex positive and really a beautiful thing. And I think if people had less concern for the sex lives of other people and more concern for the whole lives of other people, I think that we would be in a much better place. And I when I see the pushback, we recently went up with a billboard in Toledo, and I was reading some of the comments. Please never do that, people. Don't read the comments. But I did. I didn't listen to my own advice. And so much of it is, what we call slut shaming, kind of calling into question the sex lives of people who have abortions. And I thought to myself, wow, where are these people when it comes time for, paid family leave, for childcare, I don't know, the Affordable Care Act, the Medicaid expansion? All of a sudden, they don't care about these women and their children. And, and that to me is the real test. Do you care about someone throughout their entire life? Or are you just concerned with controlling their sexual behavior? And I think the answer is pretty clear when it comes to our opposition.
Our opposition, in terms of a generally uninformed electorate and comment posting group in general, but specifically our opposition when it comes to groups like Ohio Right to Life, who have recently, announced that they oppose exceptions in abortion restrictions that would allow the procedure for survivors of rape or incest. When it actually comes down to very specific policies, I'm horrified that groups would choose that path and then force it upon, indirectly women across the state, but directly on elected officials who are trying to consider what's best for their, for their constituents. I don't know, how should we work with opposition like that?
Well, sometimes there isn't a space to work with. I think there's a dialogue though that needs to happen. There's some people we're never going to convince. That's their viewpoint. That's what they're about. But I do think that Ohio Right to Life has really made a tactical error on changing their endorsement like this, because I think any decent person who's running for office is going to look at that endorsement as really not being something useful. That's something that's going to be damaging to their political careers. Even a lot of our opponents who, maybe they don't support abortion rights as broadly as we do, most of them have at least acknowledged that in that case that, that they would, have some sympathy towards a woman in that situation. And, our Right to Life is like, no, we don't care what's happened to you. We don't care what you've been through. We're going to compel you to continue pregnancy, regardless of how it started, regardless of what's happening. And that's I don't know how that's a politically strong position to take. I don't know, Elaina, you may have more to add to that, but I just, as someone who works in the political sphere, I looked at that and was like, that's really boneheaded.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you that even our most hardened of opponents would at least, make exceptions for rape and incest. That's just unconscionable to me. But I am with you that dialogue is possible, as well as I have to hope that as is conversion. I mean, when we think about this toxic religion and the alternative message that the Ohio RCRC wants to promote, I know this to be true because of my own experiences. Like I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian upbringing, and it wasn't until I was able to encounter people's stories, have my own life turned upside down, to realize that that there has to be more out there, and that it is possible. Because I used to peddle a lot of these same talking points and such. But when I thought about it in lens of through women's experiences and lived realities, it just does not work.
Right.
We got 2 minutes left. You got any final thoughts?
I am just super excited about getting to work with the RCRC in this more strategic and close way. And, I think the other thing I would say to the listeners out there is that, one of the beauties of our movement is that, if you're an atheist, agnostic, or a person of faith, you have a home here in this movement, and that your viewpoint is valued and accepted, and that you're not required to have one way of thought. If you believe that the government should not be making reproductive health care decisions for other people, then you're on Team Choice.
I'm with you all the way. I mean, this is a team that I'm just so proud to be a part of. I mean, I've worked in a lot of, religious, faith-based spaces, and I'm just surprised and encouraged by such deep, people who are reflective and thoughtful and just super powerful and strategic as a NARAL team. And to do this work, it's just, it means everything to me. So thank you for this partnership. And I look forward to learning along the way. I need all the mentorship and guiding and support. And I can think of no better place to do that with than with NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio.
Well, thanks for taking the lead. We're all very lucky.
Okay. Well, thank you both for sitting down and having this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Man.
Yeah.
We like to call him Mr. Man. Listeners out there, if you didn't know.
We'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
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 The man.
Mr. Man.